Greetings everyone, and welcome back to Pep Organ. Today I'm not going to be talking about music, but rather something else that I find is very important. Because I run a music channel, especially a classical music channel, I know that a large portion of my audience are in the older demographic, so perhaps you may not hear perspectives from younger people like myself. Having been born in 1998, full disclosure, I'm 24, and I wanted to talk about my generation and what I feel are some problems that we are encountering, both men and women. But I'm talking about this on Pep Organ because I wanted you to know more about just the general societal level and cultural level of our generations and what's going on, because it doesn't get talked about enough. And even though this is a music channel and I always want to share music with you, I really want to talk about this too. It's very important to me, and it relates to all sorts of things in life, not just musical tastes, but the church, the future of the church, the future of our culture, of what society will look like in the future. And as a young person, I'm a little bit concerned about it, so this is what I want to talk about today. The thing that I notice about my generation and about the messaging that my generation is sort of indoctrinated with is a culture of low effort. For a long time, perhaps starting maybe 50 or 60 years ago, society started to become more and more casualized, and it became more and more the case that people's time was being taken up by consumption of media. I think that before this time, there was a lot more social interaction, but as first television and then the internet and video games and all sorts of things have come into our lives that are highly addictive and highly attention-seeking, we've lost more and more of something really precious, which isn't just social time. And I myself am an introvert, so I don't really relate too much to going out and partying and socializing like that. But what I do relate to is the loss of time just to think, to breathe, to exist, and just to be amongst the world, rather than being always taken out of it by technology. I'm a person who really is quite passionate and interested in technology, and I think about it a lot in my life. But at the same time, I also always try to distance myself from it when I can. I think that the existential crisis of people in my age demographic is their relationship with technology. So we were the first generation really who were surrounded by highly addictive technology. So whether that was handheld video games at first, and then it became smartphones as I was growing up into an adult, we have been surrounded by Facebook and social media and all these things that are constantly trying to take our attention away. And the result is that people have stopped living just for the sake of living, and instead they're always living to seek attention from others, to seek validation. They go and do things, not for the sake of doing them, but for the sake of sharing them, posting them online, and losing the fact that you can live in the moment and not live for a future photo that you want to look back at, but rather than enjoying the actual moment that was actually there. Now, this idea of low effort and the casualization I was talking about is the sense that particularly you see this in the way society is structured and the way it aesthetically looks these days. So the way that we dress has dramatically changed from the past. You started to see brands and logos pasted on t-shirts. The general style and dress just generally all became more casual over time. And when I was younger, I used to dress this way as well. I used to just wear any t-shirt and any pair of shorts or jeans or whatever, and I didn't really care about it. But as I started to get older, I started to think more about what society used to be like, and I get nostalgic for things that I never was a part of. So I'm a huge lover of the 19th century, especially the aesthetics, the architecture. When I went to Sydney when I was younger, I was just amazed at all the Victorian architecture that we were surrounded by, but also dismayed by the graffiti on some of these buildings. And when I thought about the way that people used to dress, especially men, I didn't think that it was a patriarchal system or something oppressive, but rather it was men who took pride in the way that they dressed. There was, of course, a class element to this, and I don't ever endorse a return to that sort of class-based hierarchy. But what I think is really interesting about today's era, especially with the internet, the access to very, very cheaply made, cheap manufacturing, is that someone like me was able to dress in a 19th century style, or with waistcoats, ties, frock coat, whatever I wanted, and I could do it very, very cheaply. So there was really no class barrier. There's no barrier to entry in terms of price to wear nice things these days. And that made me realize that I could do this, and I decided to do it. And that's when I started to wear historical clothes about 6 years ago now, and basically every day I do wear something historical. Today is probably the most casual I get. Still try and have a collar if I can. It is going to get hot in Australia as summer comes up. But what I've seen is just, and I'm not criticizing people who do this, because it's always the case that we always want to follow the culture the way it goes. We always want to fit in, of course. We want to belong. I'm a weird person who doesn't like to belong. I like to be a contrarian when I can. So that's part of the reason why I decided to dress differently to everyone around me. But at the same time, I also strongly think that we should all have a bigger think about how we want to present ourselves in society and how we want to leave a legacy for the future. And when people look back on the photos from our youth and say, wow, those people dressed well, just day to day. Our entire society now is so casual, and you just see when there's graffiti around the cities and there's mess. Sydney's a pretty clean city, but even still, the architecture is just a lot of it is so rigid and sad and depressing. I totally am not a person who is advocating a return to historical styles. I'm not really a traditionalist in that sense. What I do feel, though, is that we've lost the humanity and the sense of character and place in modern architecture. And our clothes also reflect this sort of globalized whatever culture that's more focused on the consumption rather than identity, especially identity in the sense of being proud of being a human and getting out of bed and deciding to put on something nice to go out in the world. So that was the first thing. There's a society of low effort, and while people are dressing like this, they're also engaged so much in social media to the point of addiction. Now, I wanted to talk next about maturity, because though I'm still in my early 20s, I do start to see how society as a whole is not maturing as in the way that they used to. There was once an expectation that people would get married in their early 20s, and over the time, over the years, that age average slowly crept forward. It's not that I'm criticizing people who get married at different age groups. Everyone has their own life, and they have their own career and their own decisions to make. But I would say that for the majority of people, the best way to live is a stable life. And I think stability means being married, being in a relationship that's long-lasting, and perhaps in future having children as well as part of that. The other thing I've really noticed is that all the media and the majority of the messaging that my generation receives is never to have children, never to get married, and always to live a free, happy life. And for me, I really believe that is just horrible advice, because I think that relationships really are the defining element that your entire life will be. And when you get older, you'll probably realize that more and more as you realize that you wish that you had lived your life in a committed relationship to someone else. This is a problem with the way that culture has been casualized as well, because it's casualized the seriousness of relationships, the seriousness of living, the seriousness of the fact that you want to get up and try and achieve something. This low-effort society is one where people get up and they just browse their social media for the day, and then if they have to work, they have to work, but otherwise they try not to, and they just try and live a happy life. And I think that there's far more that can be done. There are some people out there who are still working hard, and I know that lots of people are working very, very hard. And also there's people who are working so hard on their careers that they wouldn't even dream of being in a relationship or dream of having children. And I would say that while those people do exist, the majority of us are not like that. And we can't use the excuse of hard work to really hide the fact that we're not wanting to mature in life, to be serious about our own career, our own life goals, our relationships, everything. So I would say to my own generation, if you're in a relationship and you're not serious about it, then why are you still in it? Because one year you're in your early 20s, but then a few years later you'll be in your late 20s and then soon your 30s. And if you still haven't chosen someone that you want to be serious with, then it's a real problem, because you're going to get to that age where you start to feel like you're pretty lost. I can't say this personally because I'm not having got to that age group, but this is just from what I've heard from others. So, a few things to think about today. Nothing related to music particularly, but I would say that this is something I've wanted to share for a long time. So, I hope you find this interesting, and please subscribe to Pep Organ, and you'll hear more from me soon, more about music. So, thanks for watching.